Thank you so much for being with us today. We're here today to talk about your show, All Our Relations, Art of the Wampanoag Nation, happening now through June 29th at the Cotuit Center for the Arts. The exhibition is co-created by Mashpee, Wampanoag, Paula Peters, and Michelle St. John, a member of the board of directors of the Cotuit Center for the Arts, with appreciation for the ancestors. So I'm excited to talk with you about this landmark gallery exhibition, which is showcasing the largest collection of Wampanoag art ever assembled in one place. It features over 100 contemporary and traditional works from 26 Wampanoag artists across the region. So please start by introducing yourselves and tell us about who you are and the modalities that you work with.
Well, I'm Penny Gamble Williams, and I'm from the Chappaquiddick tribe of the Wampanoag Nation. I've been painting in the arts since I was, many moons ago, let's put it that way. You know, my mother was an artist, and I was very influenced by what she was doing, you know, the crafts, the beading, all the things that she did. And so I've been on that, you know, that road for a long, long time. My art basically is, I call myself like an abstract realist because I combine a lot of different things. I work mixed media, collages, kind of surrounded here by my stuff. I'm looking, what else do I do? Yeah, just whatever materials I have, I like using them. And I don't know, so much of what I do, you know, it comes from a spiritual kind of place. You know, when I sit in front of whatever medium I'm going to be using, you know, it's like a prayer, and then things just start to flow. I don't know, I could go on and on and on, but I just really enjoy being creative. You know, it's that gift the creator gave, and I use it as much as I can.
Wani Kisak, my name is Mwalim. I'm known professionally as Mwalim, the Funky Professor. My participation in the exhibit is through the collective called Wamptronica. We're a primarily Wampanoag and First Nation underground dance music collective. And we started actually back in 2021, just as the pandemic was starting to lighten up. We came together and started throwing underground dance music parties at the Native Art Gallery that used to be in Mashpee on Friday nights. And then when that gallery closed, we actually moved the party to New Bedford and have been doing it every month, I should say, at the Gallery X down there, and floating it around to different places in the city. We do, during the summertime, do an underground pop-up dance party tour around Eastern Massachusetts. And actually, Rhode Island also gets hit a little bit also. Well, actually, come to think of it, Rhode Island and New Hampshire get hit with the tour a little bit. And with Wamptronica, some of it, I can honestly say we were influenced somewhat by groups like Hallucination, who used to be called A Tribe Called Red, and what they were doing in terms of blending native music with underground dance forms. And before we started the interview, I pointed out that I'm an old school house music head. Well, before we even knew it was called house music, an old school house music, underground dance music person, and have a jazz background, primarily jazz and classical. But when I got into underground dance music, that sort of gave me an outlet for all of that. What ended up happening was we became two generations of underground dance music people. So my son, who is also a producer and creator of underground dance music, we do a lot of this through Wamptronica. We also have a weekly radio show on WNB1 radio called From the Underground, where we spin the music. And with the exhibit in particular, the other piece that I explored was my background as a filmmaker. To give you the full thing, I'm a musician, filmmaker, playwright, novelist, storyteller. So it's kind of fun with a piece like this to try to explore those different elements. because a couple of the things that we focus on with Wamptronica is first establishing the contemporary Wampanoag presence in public spaces, which is why we do the pop-up dance party, and also contemporary interpretation of Wampanoag social traditions, which is why we utilize dance music, and why we also have a very participatory philosophy to why we do it in public spaces and encourage people, hey, you like the music, groove to it, come dance to it, come feel it. So it's basically part of the entire "we're still here" idea. It's that, yes, this is the contemporary world, and we still bring our traditions, and we still bring our thoughts and our practices in, and we can even utilize technology to create our medicine, if you will. The exhibit that we have, which is upstairs, kind of way back in the corner, we created an audio video installation of three of our underground dance music pieces, and we then not so much a music video as much as visuals that are stimulated by the sounds and the feel and the nature. So we tried to capture a lot of visual images of nature. And this, even as funny as it might sound, because we're using electronic instruments, but still trying to capture that natural raw element. So we have pieces in like one called Sagamore, which is a flute piece over house music. And we have one called Sparrow, where we used a kalimba as the main instrument. And the video that goes with it, we basically tried to capture flight from a sparrow's point of view through backyards and through parks and through city streets and through fields, and just sort of that visual image. And the same thing with Sagamore, just to try to give more of I guess you could say, an immersive sense. So if you go to the back, you'll see a big screen and you'll see headphones, and put the headphones on and, hear the music, feel the music, see the visual. And it's to just try to give you that experience. The other piece with Wamptronica, we're also contemporary interpretation of the tradition known as the Ahana Inen, which is particularly the Wampanoag, or I could say Eastern, because I found there are Ahana Inen among several of the nations in this area. But the Ahana Inen is basically the sacred clown, the trickster. And so another way that the trickster can show up is when you show up as a DJ with your music as your medicine. And the immersive experience would be sort of the way that the trickster works. So again, it's, what we're trying to do. And it is a beautiful thing about the exhibit is the fact that it shows that diversity. It's not just what I call the fetish. And when I say the fetish, you have people who want Wampanoags to present themselves the way that we lived 1,000 years ago, and they want, and that's the only authentic Wampanoag that they'll see. And the notion of a contemporary existence sometimes they find off-putting, and unfortunately, because we've been gaslit into feeding into the fetish, sometimes we'll try to keep things like that. But the wonderful thing about this exhibit is it's showing. You see, as mentioned with Anawan's flashback piece, we're understanding our history. Our history is represented. Our tradition is represented in our pottery. It's represented in our artwork. It's represented in our crafts. But by the same token, you're seeing our artwork, our philosophy, our spirit, our culture being represented in contemporary forms, in graphic art, in fashion, in modern music, in dance, in all of these things merging. So it's giving you sort of a complete picture of the we are the Wampanoag who were here, we are the Wampanoag who are here, and we're the Wampanoag who are going to be here. And so this exhibit definitely sort of shows that, I guess you could say, that breadth and depth of art and culture from our communities.
My name is Jennifer Staples, and I am from the Wampanoag tribe of Gayhedaquina. My mother is currently on her third term of being an elected tribal councilwoman, and her mother is on a very well-known collectible postcard from the 1950s called Gayhead Girl, and she stands proud in her regalia. And So part of what I do as an artist is I'm a block print artist, and I've actually done the postcard of my grandmother as a block print, which is really a special gift that I have to honor her with. And I own one of the shops up at the Gayhead Cliffs at the Overlook at the Circle, and I sell all my block prints there. And then this will be the third year. So 3 years ago, I started selling the pottery made with the clay from the cliffs. But it's been a longer journey than that. It's been about a 7-year journey to figure out how to harvest the clay, process the clay, and work the clay, because there is no. Our last potter died over 25 years ago, Gladys Wittes. So there was really nobody directly to pass on the knowledge. But I was lucky enough to participate in a class taught by Beverly Wright, whose grandparents were potters. And she didn't show us anything with her hands because she's not a potter. But what she did was she taught us what she remembered seeing her grandparents do. And the gift that she gave that day was how I get the colors to swirl the way they did, 20, 30, 40, even longer years ago. So I'm doing my best to work with some of the information from the past that I can get. I also work with Donald Wittes, and his mother was Gladys Wittes, the last potter. And he tells me what I'm not doing right so that I can go back and do better. And that's a gift as well. So it took me about 4 years to really understand the clay. I go and I harvest between 4 to 6 colors at a time. I walk about a half a mile into the cliffs in the sand to find the colors that I need. And then I walk that half a mile out with about 35 pounds of clay in my backpack. And I go get it myself. And then the processing starts, which incorporates grinding the clay until it is the consistency of powder, and it comes to me in rock form. So that part is pretty labor intensive. And then the clay needs to be sifted. I've learned to sift it 4 times and through different size screens so that I can get as much of the impurities out as possible, because traditionally the pottery was burnished and not fired. So if you fire the clay from the cliffs, all the colors except the white turn red. The yellows, the grays, all of the colors turn red. So traditionally we've always burnished the pottery, which is an ancient technique of polishing it when it still has moisture in it. And that creates the most beautiful, smooth finish on the piece. And then it has to dry really, really slowly or else it cracks because they're not fired. So they're super delicate, but they're beautiful, and they represent the colors of the tribe, and they represent the history of our ancestors that have worked this clay for many, many, many decades. And to what Mwalem said about being a contemporary Wampanoag, I did want to bring my own aesthetic to my pottery. So I do traditional pinch pots, but the majority of my work is on the wheel, and they're more contemporary shapes that represent my aesthetic as a modern Wampanoag. And I'm super proud of what I produce, and I'm even more touched by the effect it's had on my community. To see people's faces when they come in and they see it and they can actually purchase a piece to gift to their loved ones, and just to have that access to the pottery again brings so much joy to everybody. It's a true honor to work with the clay. And then I was inspired because once I make the piece, the next day or two, I have to trim it and actually do the final shaping on it. and the trimmings that were coming off were so beautifully swirled with all the amazing colors. I was inspired to figure out a way to get really thin slices of the clay, and I can set it into pendants and jewelry and seal it with a resin, and so now I have a whole line of jewelry with the beautifully swirled colors, and to be able to take something so sacred and wear it with you every day is pretty amazing. So yeah, I'm I'm honored to use it, but I'm trying to figure out each year a new way to use the scraps that I have and make sure that every piece that I backpack out gets used and appreciated and honored. And so it's been really amazing to kind of revive an art that was lost and kind of bring so much joy to everybody, let alone myself, So to be in the show again is kind of next level. Never really expected that kind of thing to start happening, but I think as we do more things like this, it's just so beneficial for all of us that are involved in the show, for people to see what we're doing and what we look like, and to understand. I mean, I know I don't look like everybody else in the tribe, but to understand that we are a rainbow of people, and that 400 years is a long time, and a lot of things change, And I'd also like to mention that I have a case of vitiligo, which is an autoimmune disorder which the body starts to attack your pigment. And so it started when I was about 5 years old. I came in one day with a little white spot, and my mom tried to wash it off in the bathtub, and it didn't come off. And slowly, over about 20 years, I lost all of my pigment. So I've turned into what equates to an albino, but I'm still a true Wampanoag inside, and I still am who I am on the inside, and I think that's another thing that is important for people to learn, because you got to get to know people to understand who they are. You can't make a decision just based on what you see,
With your clay, there's lots of bright colors. I want listeners to know just how the colors contrast. Like, you have these beautiful yellows and these really bright pigments in the bottom.
Well, so actually, to understand why the colors are there, and actually why they're at such severe angles and different, degrees of being pushed from the ground. So what each layer is in the cliffs is a section of the Earth's history and decayed plant life that was pushed up from really deep down in the Earth during the last ice age. When the last glacier came through this area, it was such a deep glacier, and as it moved, it actually took those layers of the Earth's history and pushed them up and out of the Earth. So the orange and the yellow are very iron-rich times in the Earth's history. The grays, the darker grays, are times when there were fires and burning. And then the deepest dark black, which I thought was also from burn times, is actually an ancient organic soil. And that's actually where a lot of the artifacts and preserved bones come from, the black, because the soil has preserved it, whereas the more iron-rich colors don't preserve things as well. So the colors are actually the Earth's history, and they each tell a story, and they're absolutely striking. And I don't control the way it comes out. I can combine, I process each color separately, and I only combine them right before I make the piece. And each piece is uniquely different depending on how many times I cone up and cone down, or how many times I allow the clay to incorporate with each other. And the more I mix it, it starts to look more like a marble than stripes. But the danger is, with the less mixing, the more potential for a crack to form when it's drying. So there's a real tricky balance between going for that real thick striped look it's tricky, but I wish I had control over how the end piece came out, but those things have a mind of their own, and I still get excited to peel each one because that's when I get to see, when I make the piece on the wheel, it creates a layer of slip. So it creates this real fleshy color because all the colors are mixing as I'm working the piece. So it's really the next day and a half when I put it back on the wheel to trim it, where I get to see kind of what's going on. So, and I see the shoreline in them. I see the sky. I see galaxies. I mean, you just, you look at them long enough and you start to see just the most beautiful things in them. Yeah.
There's a story that goes along with it too, a myth that's very much a part of the Gayhead tribe, right?
Mm-hmm. Our Moshe story. The red color comes from our grandfather Moshe, who cared for the Aquinnah Wampanoags, and part of that caring for us was to capture whales, to walk out into the ocean and grab them, and he smashed them against the cliffs, and the blood of the whales is what stained the cliffs into the red color. Yeah. So, but he cared for us. Our story goes that when he knew that there was danger on its way, he gathered all of the Aquinnah Wampanoags and he told them what was coming. And he said that he would turn us either into animals to live in the ocean, or we could stay on Earth in our human form. And part of our tribe chose to live in the ocean, and those are the whales and the dolphins and the creatures that live around us now are our ancestors because they chose to live in the water, and part of us chose to stay on land.
Penny, would you like to talk a little bit about what the art show means to you?
This exhibit is amazing. I feel I'm so grateful that I am a part of it. And, the depth and just the work with all the different things that people created are just absolutely amazing, from weaving to carving to any and everything, jewelry, even, the first light flashback with Anawan Whedon, the words, the history. I mean, everything just flowed, and just meeting people and being around relatives, people I haven't seen in a long time. It was all this wonderful big package of gifts, just being with everybody. It made me feel like, wow, finally, people get to see who we are through our expressions of creation. And there are stories and everything that is presented there, whether it's a painting or I do a lot of line drawings, black and white. And so much of what I do involves faces of who we are, the mixtures of who many of us are as Wampanoag, with locks or straight hair or, so I capture that in these lines and circles because, life is like a spiral with all these different circles, the circles of life, of experiences. And so I've never really presented that work in many, I've done some art shows here, but that was I have 5 pieces in the show, and 2 of them are the line drawings and, kind of capturing, the flora and fauna, and, they're subtle in there, and there might be some corn or trees or bark, there's all of those elements. Anyway, I was just happy to be able to present that there. Just, having this amazing opportunity for all of us to be able to showcase our work and who we are, I think is a big deal.
It would be great to see the show move to other venues. I think we have something really special, and it would be great to try to get it to move around, even if it's to each started in Mashpee. Maybe it can do a Quina. It can go to each of the homelands of each of the artists that are in it or something like that. Just something, just to keep it going would be great. And maybe to try to get some more institutions to embrace doing shows like this. You know, we have to maybe advocate for ourselves a little more and just kind of get out there more.
Yeah, and have it travel around the country,
Yeah. Outside of Massachusetts. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know who the Wampanoag are. And
I know.
think it's a real shame because it's such an important part of the birth of the country.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, getting the word out is important, making sure people are learning and being educated. And, you know, it's a big part of what I do in my shop every day is just talk to people all day long, talking about Wampanoag and history and Moshup and, you know, all of it. So it's an honor to do. But we need to do it outside of Massachusetts somehow. Yeah.
Yeah. It's such an opportunity really to educate America on the real story, because
it would be great to get a story about the show to air on like a major news channel for Native American Month. Like I'm always so disappointed with the things I see that are covered that are, you know, there's just so much more beauty in our culture than gets shown. So I think that would be really neat to kind of like really reach for the stars, you know, try to go big with something.
One of the wonderful things, right in line with what you've been saying, that we have to acknowledge, this actually has First Nation curators.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when you have exhibits like this, it goes back to, I'm sorry, I'm going to use that word again, it goes back to the fetish factor. It goes back to, oh, we need native representation, or oh, we should do something Wampanoag, or we should do something native, and you have, you know, and it's, you know, the what is it? Good intentions or pave the road to hell. Well, you know, you'll end up with that happening because oftentimes, even though it's with good intentions, you still have curators who are coming with a considerable amount of prejudice and ignorance, not, you know, malicious prejudice and ignorance, but still prejudice and ignorance. And unfortunately, that's informing their idea of what you see. And the wonderful thing about this is because you're dealing with people who are in the community, from the community, and understand the history and the present, this also shapes then the concept of how this is going to be presented. Because, you know, Cape Cod in particular is land of the gatekeepers. And, you know, in terms of arts and culture in general, it's the land of the gatekeepers. And even though you sometimes see gatekeepers shift, it's still the land of the gatekeepers. So you still end up with a lot of curation that's not based in so much information as much as what I call comfort. You have people of who are of European extraction who are uncomfortable by some of the points of history, who are uncomfortable by some of the facts that are made. You know, when you spoke earlier of the rainbow factor of the Wampanoag, Jennifer, it's exactly the same kind of thing. They're uncomfortable when they see, you know, I have them behind me, but here, I can show you. When you're a Wampanoag and we show up with locks, when we're Wampanoag and we show up with blonde hair, it's sort of like, wait, you don't look like, you know, the good old, you don't look like an Indian. And then you end up with people, well, I don't know if I want to get you to represent because you don't look like my idea of a Wampanoag, or you don't look like the majority's idea of what a Native person is supposed to look like, or your artwork isn't, you know, we didn't want drum machines, we wanted hand drums. You know, it becomes that kind of conversation. And the wonderful thing about when you have curators who actually have an expertise in the culture, that's when you're going to start to see authentic representation. And we don't get a lot of that on the Cape. So this is another thing that made this a wonderful breakthrough exhibit, especially for this region.
And thank you all for being here today. We've been speaking with Walim DeFunky Professor Penny Gamble Williams and Jennifer Staples. The show, All Our Relations, will be up at the Cotuit Center for the Arts through June 29th.